Going to be talking about a champion today that is always quite interesting to discuss because there are many ways to build her. That's right, we are talking about Arbiter, the champion that you'll get for finishing these Arbiter missions here, going through an insane amount of mundane tasks inside the game to finally get yourself the reward. And then after that, you'll also be able to do the Ramen 2 missions and the Marius missions, which I am still stuck on, but maybe some showcases on those champions at some point in the future. For today, though, we are sticking to Arbiter, a fantastic champion in my opinion. Let's go ahead, let's talk about her kit and what makes her so special. First of all, we're going to have an A1 that attacks one enemy 2 times, each hit having a 50% chance of placing a weakened for 2 turns. A2 attacks all enemies 1 time. 100% chance of decreasing the duration of all enemy buffs by 1 turn. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, by the way, so definitely been power crept a little bit, I would say. Mentor of Heroes is on a 3-turn cooldown, and this places an increased attack on all allies for 2 turns, then fills the turn meters of all allies by 30%, heals all allies by 25% of their max HP if they have less than 50% HP. And finally, the A4, that's right, this is one of the champions that has 4 skills in the game. This is going to be on a 5-turn cooldown, revives all dead allies to 35% HP, then fills the turn meters of all allies by 20%. Grants an extra turn to this champion if an ally was successfully revived. So this is a very, very nice revive skill in all honesty. And the aura skill is going to be to increase ally speed in arena battles by 30%. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the base stats, Arbiter is also special in the way that she has 110 base speed, which puts her ahead of a lot of other champions inside the game. So the usual way people build her out is going to be as an absolute speed demon, and to that end, you're going to have intimidating presence as you're awakening on her. If you don't have a use for her in the arena or you're using her somewhere else, you could also use something like a cruelty on her to help decrease the defenses of anybody that you might be targeting. Arbiter is out and out a support champion. You're not going to be building her for damage. You're not really going to be expecting too much damage out of her in your runs, but she does a god tier job of enabling the rest of your team to do a lot of damage, especially with her increased attack. She's one of the best turn meter boosters for use in the arena, especially live arena as well. And she's only really outclassed by maybe somebody like a Sifi, but then again, that Sifi also doesn't have the speed aura as well. So these days, you pretty much need to have her high awakened, though, to actually be able to depend on this aura, essentially. The 5 and 6 star awakenings for this particular awakening are absolutely insane. So it's basically going to weaken the enemy's team aura by 20% while strengthening your own by 35%. So you want to have her 5 or 6 star awakened if you're really depending on her aura to be a lead. How do you build her? I'll throw my infographic up on screen here now for you to check out. Essentially, priority 1 is, of course, going to be speed, and priority 2 is going to be accuracy if you really care about the weaken debuff coming in on the A1. If you don't particularly care about landing that weaken on the A1, then you're really only going to be worried about having speed and then some survivability in there as well, but I certainly wouldn't sacrifice any sort of speed to make that happen. As you can see, I don't even have this champion booked out, and I do use her quite significantly inside the arena, so you don't necessarily have to spend books on her to get a decent amount of potential out of her either. If you're depending on her as a crutch, for example PvE or something like that as well, you might want to start looking at booking her at that point. And she doesn't take too many books either, which is quite nice. How do I have her built? These are the stats we're rocking: 46,000 HP, 2,995 defense, and 369 speed. This is, of course, the fastest champion on my account. If I really optimized the gear, I could get her up to about 374, but then I'd have to pull some gear off my Crixia, which is not something that I'm interested in doing. She is quite slow as far as today's meta goes. You definitely see a lot of faster Arbiters out there, and you'll probably see that in the showcase inside the live arena as well. Especially once you have her awakened at a 5 or a 6 star, right? It's really going to help to speed up those enemy teams, but she still gets the job done no matter what. So let's go ahead and let's talk about her use case a little bit. You're going to be able to use this champion pretty much everywhere inside the game, notably Faction Wars. She gets used every time it's open. You can use her in Doom Tower, of course, to help you climb. City of Centranos, she's fantastic as well. There's some secret rooms that she's present in that she really helps out with. There are also secret rooms inside the Doom Tower, of course, especially on hard if you're trying to farm for those particular champions where she'll be able to help you progress. Having a champion that can enable damage as well as also bring you a revive is incredibly rare. So you're looking at the likes of somebody like a Sifi, a Duchess, Arbiter, and there's not too many champions that bring like an increased attack or something like that, right? So this is a very unique kit. And considering she is 100% free-to-play friendly as well, it's very nice. There are some cool skins for her as well, if that's really something that you care about. I have all of them except the Jade Serpent. This is how the default Arbiter looks, of course. If you're curious, I just realized I had one equipped. Let's go ahead and talk about the Masteries real quick. I do have her built out with Timely Intervention. That way, essentially, if we get outsped and somebody else gets damaged on the team, she's essentially going to boost her turn meter by 20%. So you could also go ahead and build her in something like this, also with a Swift Parry, or maybe a Stone Skin set. Those are very good sets on her as well. In the infographic I shared, you can see that basically anything that's really going to boost your speed or give you that guaranteed turn, like a Stone Skin set, is going to be kind of what you're looking for on this particular champion. And then I also have her built out with some counterattack masteries there as well. Let's go ahead, let's hop into some arena and see what we can make happen here. So we're going to find maybe another speed team like this. Let's go ahead and run our speed team in against it. This is also a 2-star Awakened, and we do have a 5-star Intimidating Presence coming in from our Wukong. So let's go ahead and see if we can outspeed them. I'm fairly certain we'll be able to based on their team composition. I don't imagine they have the best gear or anything like that. There we go. Everybody's cooldowns are increased, and that is game over. The one thing to make mention of as well that I see a lot of newbies make the mistake, if you're going to be using Arbiter inside the arena, make sure that you are speed tuning your team. So if you do a Google search for Raid Shadow Legends Arena Speed Tune or Arena Calculator, something along those lines, you should be directed to the Deadwood Jedi website, where it's essentially going to allow you to tune your team for Arena. And what I mean by that essentially is if we think about Arbiter coming in and speed boosting, there's going to be a minimum speed threshold that Crixia has to beat, or meet rather, to be able to actually guarantee that she goes next. So for example, if my Arbiter's at 500 speed and their Arbiter's at 450, even with that turn meter boost, she's still going to need like 370 speed. And these are all just made up numbers. These are not exact figures. Whereas, so if she was at 365 speed, then their Arbiter would cut in essentially, and then the rest of their team might have a chance of going once they receive that speed boost. So just make sure that you are correctly tuning your team. That specific speed tune tool is essentially going to allow you to go ahead and put in the auras, as well as, I believe, gear sets, as well as the skills that are being used, and it lets you know the minimum speeds that you'll need. So my Crixia is running at around 345 speed, I believe, and she doesn't get cut in on because she is within that threshold for my particular Arbiter. A lot of times, though, even if I get outsped with my Arbiter, I'll have essentially people that don't have their team tuned, so I'm able to cut in, which is insane, especially considering that those teams are in Gold 5 at this point, or even low Plat. So definitely make sure that's a step that you take. This is also an interesting team. I'm not quite sure what they're doing here. They have kind of a weird mix of champions going on, but that is okay, I suppose. I think we'll be able to win this one without too much issue. We didn't get the cooldowns increased on the Syl, though, which is a bit of a shame. And then, of course, Rotos is being a little bit pesky and surviving, considering his passive as well as his, damage reductions and his extra turns and all those insane things. We got a cooldown reset, though, so I think we're going to be able to go ahead and slam into him a few times here and hopefully get some damage. We just did 13k on a weak hit from the Wukong as well, by the way. That is absolutely insane. 10k coming in from the Arbiter there. She just wanted to prove me wrong when I said that you're not really looking for damage from her. Let's go ahead and see if we can outspeed a team like this. We won't actually be able to. The reason for that is going to be Tormund. So Tormund does actually hard counter any sort of Arbiter teams, and this is a good thing to call out. So if you're running her in live arena, especially when you see a Tormund get picked, you'll know what's up. Essentially, he has a 20% chance of placing a freeze every time they receive a buff or have their turn meter filled. And for Arbiter, who's filling everybody's turn meter and who's also buffing on basically every single skill, that's definitely going to be a bit of an issue. So just make sure if the enemy team has a Tormund that you do something to counter that. A very effective counter, actually, from what I've found, especially for lower level arena or even low level live arena, I imagine it would work, is actually running somebody like a Dark Elhain. Dark Elhain essentially has a instant activation on her nuke, which also places an increased attack on herself whenever an ally receives a freeze, which is quite nice. So she can essentially just go ahead and strip those freezes off, make sure they don't get placed, and then also go ahead and nuke the enemy team, which is quite nice. As you can see, there are definitely a lot of Tormunds kind of around the mid-gold tier here where I'm at. Let's see if we're faster than this team. Even if we're not and we survive, we can reset our skills with Crixia, so it won't be the end of the world. We are actually faster, which is quite nice too. So that's kind of exactly what I meant right there, if you've seen what happened. So you see how my Arbiter went and then my Crixia went, but then my next champion got cut in on. So instead of, let's say, for example, Sun Wukong going, their Arbiter got to go first. So you can really see how if Arbiter went, Crixia went, and then their Arbiter boosted, perhaps their Warlord would have had a chance to actually cut in and, you know, make some nasty stuff happen. So you can really see the importance of making sure that at least 2 of your champions are, you know, speed tuned, so you can essentially just go ahead and nuke them down without too much issue. And I generally recommend bringing some sort of a hard control with an Arbiter. So if you don't want to bring a Crixia, or if you don't have a Crixia, you could look at bringing a Basher, which is basically the epic equivalent. A champion everybody's going to have as well is going to be Armands, of course. If you have an Armands, you can definitely bring him for this same role. And as you can see, as long as you're picking your teams, it is definitely a very effective strategy to just go ahead and essentially speed farm your way through the Great Hall as well. You can have a couple of different options in terms of who you want to pair with Arbiter as well. So if you don't want to bring in, you know, just a regular nuker or decreased defense champion, those sorts of things, you can also bring in a blender team is what it's called, where essentially you bring in the Arbiter, of course, to speed boost, and then you bring an ally attacker with some champions that have AoE A1s, or hard-hitting A1s, essentially, that will allow you to target champions and take them down very effectively. So this is a blender comp here. You can see Ray has an AoE A1, and then Skullcrown actually has an AoE A1 as well. So essentially what will happen is the Arbiter will go, the Farrakhan will go, and the Farrakhan will ally attack. I'm going to purposely try and lose this battle so that I can show you kind of how it works, unless they are faster. They are not faster, unfortunately, for them. We'll just go ahead and attack in here, and we'll go ahead and attack in here, and then their Arbiter should go, I would think. Yes, there it is. So then Farrakhan's going to go, and he's going to have everybody A1, and they don't have quite enough damage to take us down, which is absolutely insane, considering that my champions aren't really built for survivability, so I don't know I don't know what happened there exactly. The Ray might absolutely decimate us here, though. Let's hope not. Let's just go ahead and do that. We didn't lock her out, unfortunately. She did remove all our buffs, but that's perfectly okay. We're going to go ahead and slam in there. It's very fun to come in with Arbiter teams and see what you can make happen. Another champion that I definitely like to pair with her is actually Eostrid, another fusion that we had, the Easter fusion. Eostrid has fantastic second champion abilities, essentially. So with how we were talking about the tunes and how important they are, another thing to consider is if your secondary champion is another speed booster, that's going to significantly reduce how much speed is used on your third and fourth champion. So instead of Crixia coming in, if we went ahead and replaced this with an Eostrid, Eostrid brings her own increased speed, which is something Arbiter does not bring, and she also brings another increased attack, but she also fills the turn meters by 15%, and then she gets an extra turn where she reduces the enemy turn meter by 15%, and then she also places the weaken and the decreased speed, so she's increasing your speed, decreasing the enemy's speed, increasing your turn meter, decreasing theirs. She's absolutely fantastic. So again, in that hypothetical, let's say her speed is 500, and, you know, their Arbiter's like 450, so she has to be like 350. But if Eostrid comes in, then your third champion, instead of needing to be like, you know, 350 as well, now that particular champion might only have to be 270 or something like that. Just, again, made up speeds, but you get the idea. These videos are definitely targeted more towards the early, mid, to maybe early, late game players, so you can definitely get an idea of how to build these champions, the synergies that go into them, those sorts of things. And I think one of the things that pisses me off the most when I'm watching a guide on YouTube is when the person talks about that champion, but they don't really talk about them in depth or any of the theory crafting that goes around it, and it's just strictly a bland, boring showcase where it's like, this champion does decent damage, this champion is used in Fire Knight, this champion is used with this gear. That's the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Bye. And it's just that there's no value to that content, in my humble opinion. And I'm not targeting any specific content creator, by the way, so don't get the wrong idea here. But essentially, I like to add a little bit more substance to my reviews. I like to talk about synergies, where you can use the champions a little bit more in depth, and how they can be used in specific roles. Because the cool thing about Raid Shadow Legends is that for any specific champion you can bring into a fight, there is damn near an infinite number of ways that you could build them. Even if you think about somebody like an Arbiter, again, you can build her in a stone skin set, so she survives, revives, increases attack. You can build her to be an absolute speed demon. You can have her there essentially as a ban bait for live arena. You can build her for PvE. Like, there's so many viable builds that you can use on these champions. And not only that, once you start to consider set bonuses and whatnot, some of this stuff can get absolutely insane. Arbiter in a supersonic set is going to be very good at cutting in after somebody like a Sifi goes as well, and you can bring those speed thresholds down a little bit too. So that's a bit more of an advanced tactic that some of my longer running players might understand a bit better. If you're a bit newer, I wouldn't really worry too much about that, just because you probably won't have very good supersonic gear. That being said, though, I hope this showcase helped you guys figure out where you're going to use your Arbiter, how you want to build her, and all those sorts of good things. Thank you guys all so much for watching and the support on the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.